to have her. And Shazia, we're looking forward to it. Please come.
Thank you for the introduction, Dr. Jindal. And as Dr. Jindal mentioned, he's known me from my first year in training in Ottawa. So it's a long time. I won't tell you how long because it will give up both our ages. I don't think that's a good idea right now. But I'm delighted and happy to be here to talk to you about diabetes. Somebody said, make sure you answer some questions, etc., and make sure you cover the topic. Yes, if you wake me up in the middle of the night and ask me about diabetes, I can answer any question you want. So I hope I'll do a good job and help you to at least get an idea of what diabetes is and why it's so important. And you'll realize that we as South Asians are privileged in a way or not, depends on your perspective, as to how we look at diabetes and why is it such a big concern for people from South Asia. So the objectives Dr. Jindal gave me was to first say what is diabetes, what is pre-diabetes, who is it at risk, and what about prevention and treatment of diabetes. And if we don't treat diabetes well, what are the consequences? And you know that diabetes, we've known about diabetes for thousands of years. And for 1500 BC, before Christ, and I'm sure in the Indian literature it talks about diabetes. It was the sweet urine that was discovered, and that was what diabetes was. We've refined our definition. Have we understood diabetes? A little bit more. Do we treat diabetes? Yes, we've got lots of ways of treating diabetes. How good a job do we do? Not such a good job. So the good news is nobody dies from high blood sugar anymore in Canada or in any parts of the world where there is medication available. But we do have complications of diabetes. And unfortunately, more than half our patients with diabetes don't have good control. And that's the big issue. So why do I talk in front of audiences like you, in church basements and all over Ottawa, is to increase awareness of diabetes. It's a treatable condition, and so it's a shame if half the people with diabetes are not at a good level of treatment. So what is diabetes? Simply put, it's a high blood sugar. Sugar that's too high in your blood. Why is that? Well, there are cells in the pancreas that are making insulin. And when either there is not enough insulin or insulin that is made is not working properly, then you get diabetes. Why? Well, what are the causes? Is it as simple as that? Well, I'm trying to make it simple. It's a much more complicated process. But then, if you look at what's the relationship between glucose and insulin. If you think of the cell with a door, and this is blood sugar. All of you had lunch. Probably somebody offered me gulab jamun, so you've had some gulab jamun already. And you know that your sugar is high. This is your blood sugar. Lots of glucose in your system right now. How does that glucose get into the cell? Because glucose is needed for energy for the cell. Well, this is the key. Insulin is the key that opens that door to allow the glucose to go into the cell. And you see the problem now. If there's no insulin, this door is locked. All the glucose is in the blood, and that results in diabetes. Very simple. So, what do we do? What is the classification? There are two types of diabetes. One is type 1, which is in the young children, young adults. Onset is mostly because there is not enough insulin. The second type of diabetes is what we call insulin resistance. There's lots of diabetes, it's not, lots of it, insulin, but it's not working. Or there may be insulin that is not very effective. So there's a defect in the type of insulin that we have. And that is what we see in adults, the type 2 diabetes. That is the more common because we have more adults with diabetes than we have children with diabetes. Well, is it a numbers game? Yes, It is a numbers game when you look at it. What is the number? A magical number, easy to remember. Remember 7-Eleven, 7-Eleven stores. 7 fasting sugar, higher than 7. 2 hours after you eat or random glucose, more than 11. And if you do a special test, it's higher than 11, 11.1. And we've added this new criteria called A1C. So people say, well, I just went to temple, had gulab jamun, so my sugar's high. I don't have diabetes. I hear that all the time. Okay, then what do? We do this other test. This gives an idea of what your sugar has been over 3 months, usually. 3 months. And if that is high, above 6.5%, then yes, you have diabetes. Okay. Now, in many countries where you may not have all of this available, people are looking at just that 3-month average and saying diagnosed with diabetes. Okay. So, like I said, it's a numbers game, but how strict, how adherent are we to these? This is for purposes of diagnosis, because the implication of diabetes diagnosis is profound. Insurance, job application. People in India, if a girl has diabetes, she's not treated as well as if a boy has diabetes. Okay? So implications of diagnosis in diabetes. Okay, so what happens? Okay, this I put in just to show you that if here is where we diagnose diabetes, several years before the diagnosis, things are happening, changes are happening. 5 years, 10 years before, you might start seeing that the insulin secretion is there, but not as effective. There's insulin resistance, as we call it. So, in other words, things are happening 5, 10 years before one develops diabetes. And prevention is being looked at here. There was a study done in India for a 3-year aggressive treatment with lifestyle changes and adding a metformin, a medication that we use for diabetes, in this early stage, 5 years before, and found that at least 50-55% of people treated here did not progress to diabetes in that 3-year duration of the study. So promising, yes, but somebody says diabetes, you've got so many medications. So what if I told you you're going to have diabetes and I want you to be on a pill? It doesn't go over too well, right? They will say, okay, doctor, I'm going to find somebody else who agrees with me that I don't need medication, okay? All right, so think about that. And also to show you that diabetes is a chronic problem. It starts here and goes on. So I tell patients, okay, so what is pre-diabetes? So again, the numbers shown here, 6 to 6.9. In other words, less than 7 for diagnosis. But this alerts us. If your doctor's doing blood tests, it alerts you that you are in that pre-diabetes state and that you need to pay attention. And remember, I mentioned the study where lifestyle and medication was given and it prevented. Even if we don't give medication but concentrate on lifestyle changes, pre-diabetes can just stay pre-diabetes. You won't progress to diabetes. And that's the intent. What's happening in the world about diabetes? This is an old slide, 2003, but I put it up just to show you that the predictions are coming true. And look where India is, 108% increase. China and India. India is going to beat China in the population who's going to develop diabetes. So if we're going to be proud of anything, that's not what we want to be proud of. India is the #1 place on the earth that's going to have more diabetes than anywhere else. So that is sad, but that's what the prediction is. What about Canada? Well, 57% increase. So this is not anything to look at and say, oh yes, it's going to happen. It's going to affect us. It's your tax dollar, my tax dollar. We are spending $12 billion in Canada today on the care of patients with diabetes. So it's an enormous problem. Okay, it's not all bad news, as I said, but it's what they're calling an epidemic of diabetes. All right, so what's happening in Canada? Again, this is old data, but I put the slide up to show you that 3 million projection in 2010 is accurate. Right now we are 4.2 million for 2020 projection, and it's coming true. As I said, nobody now dies of high blood sugar, but what happens is the complications of diabetes, okay? And this reminds you, a young child, that diabetes in children is also increasing, type 2 diabetes. Okay, so who's at risk? Anybody in this room? How many know of someone with diabetes? Put up your hands. Okay. So I don't have to mention to you that diabetes is common, right? And age over 40, first degree relative with type 2 diabetes. I am keenly aware of diabetes. Why? Siblings in my family, my brothers, sisters, uncles, aunts, everybody's. You're from Hyderabad. Diabetes is so prevalent in Hyderabad that it's not even, it's scary, but encouraging. I was there in Salarjung Museum. Somebody called me Dr. Khan. So suddenly our guide who was with me took out his meter and showed me. Look at my sugars. They're all below 100. What do you think? I said, congratulations. I'm so impressed that you're checking your sugar and they're in target. So I'm not making it up. It was just so acute and it's so common, diabetes. So when you look at that, South Asians, we are at high risk. And you look at who else? Aboriginal people, African, Asian, South Asians. These are all high-risk populations. Pre-diabetes, I talked about that. Diabetes in pregnancy. So women who have diabetes during pregnancy are at very high risk of developing diabetes later on. Women who have given birth to large babies. Obesity, abdominal. This is a key for South Asians. Our BMI, that means our weight is not as heavy as some of the white people, but it's the waistline. So the waistline is the key. 90 centimeters for men and 80 centimeters for women. So if you all go home and measure and see what your waistline is, that's a clue for whether you are at risk or not, okay? And high blood pressure and high cholesterol are indicators that you may also develop diabetes. Okay? There are several other conditions, we won't go into that, but to point out there are some medications that we use that sometimes will increase the risk of diabetes. Okay, that's not to scare you, but to just bring to your attention that diabetes is something that we are all at risk for. So what about screening? How often? Should you go for a blood test every year? Well, we all fall into the high-risk group. Above age 40, yes, the risk increases. So we recommend that for people 40 years and older, every 3 years is sufficient. But earlier, if you fall into the group which is at high risk. And what we have done now is devise this calculator called CAN-RISK. And the Canadian government and all of us spent a lot of time, effort, and energy developing this. This is available on the Canadian Diabetes Association website. You all can access it and calculate your own risk. So, what is that risk? This is the calculator. It takes into account age, gender, height, weight, BMI, your waist circumference, activity level, how many vegetables and fruits you're having. You'd be surprised when I take a diet history from a patient. Fruit and vegetable is a foreign concept to a lot of people. They don't eat fruits, they don't buy it, they don't eat vegetables, they don't buy them. So vegetables and fruits gives you an indication of what your lifestyle is. Activity gives indication of the lifestyle. blood pressure and blood sugar. If you know those, you put that into the calculation. Family history of diabetes, level of education. And for us, from India, most of us have that level of education. Some may not. But why are we taking that into consideration? It's learning what we call health literacy, meaning how much of the information we give you, how much are you able to assimilate, understand, and apply. So that is important to know. But having said that, I have professors as patients. A simple formula I give them, with the thinking that, okay, you can go home and follow this. You'd be surprised. Who makes the best patient? The guy who's in the military. Why? He knows how to take orders. Do this, 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 this. He'll come back 3 months later, he's done everything that I've asked him to do. So health literacy doesn't match literacy itself, but it's the understanding, the concept. So we did add. There was a lot of discussion about that, but level of education is added as a risk factor. And if you look at the score, less than 21 is low, moderate is this. A lot of people fall into this, and 33 and higher is the high risk group. So this gives an idea. We don't want everybody having a blood sugar done, but we do want, based on this. Now we've used this in our South Asian community. Whenever there's a Diwali festival and things like that, we've offered this to people. And when we've identified the high-risk group, we have offered them, if you don't have a family doctor, then we help them to get a family doctor. Otherwise, people who do have a family doctor, we ask them to take the score and make an appointment to see the family doctor so that that is followed up. Okay. Now, we did this a few years ago and authenticated it to the extent that it can be, but follow-up is the next stage where we are at with a high-risk group. So if any of you participated, do follow up. And like I said, it's available on the Canadian Diabetes Association website. So you, your family, anyone can do the calculation. Now, age we identified as a risk factor. So if you look at this, and this is 2000 is the dark triangles, and 2016 is the gray area. And you can see that as we get older, and as more people live to be older, diabetes is going to increase. So we're all going to fall into that category. Hopefully we will live to be above 80. And as we live longer, we're going to see more diabetes. And you see here that it rises around the age of 50, 55. Why am I pointing this out to you? I will show you another slide that says that South Asians, diabetes develops 10 years before that. This is for the general population. So when we think about this, and who is South Asian? Many times I give a talk and we say, who is South Asian? Well, the definition of South Asian is people from India, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bangladesh. And who are the Asians? These are the Chinese and other people that we sort of thought of as East Asians, but they've defined South Asians and Asians as two different categories, because diabetes is different in the Chinese population. So we are trying to distinguish how best to treat the two groups. So this is what it is. And look at that. We are 1 million people now in Canada, 3% of the population. And if we have the distinction that we're going to contribute to the largest number of diabetes, again, we don't want that distinction at all. I'd much rather be the lowest if there is going to be a distinction. And 70% of these people were born outside Canada, and it's the largest number have come in the past 20 years. So it is a younger immigrant population, that's the 1 million. And it's going to get old living in Canada. So I show this to you. This is data from the UK, but similar. And you see 34, age 25 to 34, the dark blue lines are South Asians. You see the increase at 44. General population is at 50, 55. So diabetes starts 10 years early. So whenever I give talks to my colleagues in the community, family doctors, I point out that if a South Asian comes with a blood sugar of 6.8, don't neglect it. That's pre-diabetes. Get aggressive, treat. Check the blood pressure, check the cholesterol. So I'm saying to you that this is where, and as I said, the new immigrants are the younger people who've come in the past 20 years. So this is the group we want to watch and want to treat aggressively. And as we get older, the dark blue lines, you see, compared to black people and white people, we're much higher. This is UK, and we're not too far away from what the groups are in UK. Okay, what's the hypothesis? What causes diabetes? Do we blame our ancestors? Do we blame our parents? Do we have some special genes that make us we get diabetes early? Well, people have looked at all the genes and they've come up with a few genes that are sort of peculiar to South Asians. But those don't account for what is happening. What is happening is this: physical activity and diet patterns. So that is the culprit. So I tell patients, it's too late to choose your parents. It's too late for all of us. What can we choose is the environment. So we do have control over our environment. We have no control over who father and mother were or are, but we do have our environment that we can control. And this is key. This is key if we are going to do anything about diabetes. So just to tell you, I did go for my 10, 15, 20-minute walk this morning. So I'm walking the talk in a way. But like I said, when you see diabetes all the time, you have to be aware. We all have to be aware of what it does. So until now, I've been just talking in general terms. So let's meet someone. We'll call him Surinder. He's 45 years old. He's a father, husband, son, living with diabetes for the past 2 years. He's busy, he's got his own business, he has no time to do anything, but what does he do when he has spare time? Sound familiar? Likes to spend time with the family, eat delicious food and watch sports. What do you see there? What do you see there? Hope or despair? What do you see there? Despair? Yes. Why? Isn't that typical of what we do? When we have spare time, we're visiting family. And when we visit family or delicious food, food is such an integral part of our culture. Everything we do is about food. You meet people, they offer you tea, coffee, eat something. If you don't eat, they get upset. How many times you try and be polite and say, I just had lunch, I was good. Where is Manohar? He offered me gulab jamun. I said, no, thank you. I said, I just had lunch, Manohar. I'll take a glass of water. So I stuck to my guns. Yes. But our whole culture is so devised around food. All cultures, all ethnic cultures are like that. You talk to Jamaicans, you talk to people from China, you talk to people from other parts of the world. Not so much the Europeans, but definitely our Eastern cultures are all based around food. And that is the problem, in a way. I tell my patients, other places where I give a talk, don't kill your guests. Make something that you are going to be able to offer without a guilty conscience. Don't fry the food. We'll come to that. But understanding that that is what happens in our culture. So what do I do? Do I get upset with Surinder? What do I do? I talk to him just like I'm talking to you. Okay? So he went to his doctor. He says he's feeling tired. He's not active. He's gained weight. That's not a surprise. So the doctor says, okay, you need some help with your lifestyle. Time for education. And that's the key, education about diabetes. Now, what type of education? This is what, 10, 15 years ago, I spent a lot of time working with the Canadian Diabetes Association and the Ethnocultural Council of Canada. We got a grant and we started having ethnic specific meal plans. So what does that mean? If I tell you a slice of bread and meat so much and peanut butter, all of that, most of us don't eat. Rahul would be eating that, but the older ones won't, right? So what is that? Culturally sensitive. That is the key. We want to give information that you can take home and use, not just a slice of bread, which means nothing. And I remember when people came from Vietnam, we were talking to them about the slice of bread. Well, they all eat in a bowl. So if you give a slice of bread, it means nothing. They eat noodles in a bowl, they eat soup in a bowl. So we have to calculate and give instructions about how much noodles. Similarly for rice, chapati, all the food we eat, we have to make a diet. And we spend a lot of time and effort. And again, all of this is available to you on the Canadian Diabetes Association website. So that's part of it. Food is an important part of it. But also the people with diabetes, and all of us have to understand that diabetes is for life. Once you have diabetes, you have diabetes. You can control it. You can avoid the complication, but it's like a lifelong friend. It's going to be there with you. So you have to treat it like a lifelong friend, with respect, and understand diabetes is with you for the rest of your life. That acceptance is very difficult for a lot of people. Once you get that acceptance, then things become easier. It's short term, yes. It's to show you how to bring your sugar down, to talk to you about food and other activity. It's also long term. That means you're going to be seeing your doctor regularly. You do need to have everything looked at and managed. What about treatment? Well, the good news is we've got lots of treatment available. But again, it is not being used properly and not getting to target, as we say. So prevention and treatment of complications is the major problem. I mentioned to you about diabetes and education, and to remind people that this is not a one-time deal. Education, as you know, in anything is ongoing. Lifelong learning is the key. If all of us, tomorrow somebody says to me today, I know everything about something, I'd step back. This person is not going to learn anymore. If you think you know everything, then you stop learning. So it's an ongoing process.